There they are.
We have Tim Baker or Decatur Diamond, okay?
Excuse me, Tim's on vacation. Ann's supposed to be here representing, and I'm not quite sure where Ann is, so I am the only one here, unfortunately.
Do you have anything that you would like to say?
I don't. I guess
Okay.
I'm not quite sure how this all works, so.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from the public? No? Has the council seen the resolution?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Make a motion to approve?
Fred?
Second.
Dennis, second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to resume the county council meeting? Adjourn? Adjourn the public hearing and resume the county council meeting.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We'll resume the county council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of Decatur Diamond. Thank you.
That was easy.
Thanks, Chris.
Save you some lawyer fees.
Next on the agenda would be probation. Jack Odell has additionals for the Justice Services Grant. Jack? Good morning.
I'll try and be that quick. I don't know if I can keep or not. So this would be for the Justice Services Grant that we have for the pretrial position that Rhonda's doing. All I'm asking is for additionals after the grant approval from last time. So this would be for salary, training, and drug testing.
Did her rate go up?
Not for this year. It will go into 2022.
Okay.
So this grant won't be until December. They're back with us sometime next couple months of how we're going to do it for next year.
That rate's based on what the state says, right?
Yeah.
I'd make a motion to accept.
Fred?
I'll second.
Keith? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jack.
I have one more request. I don't think you guys are not at the transfer. It'd be through county general fund.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Since
5,000.
Yeah, and then since it dealt with 1,000 series, I don't know if I needed to answer any questions on that or not.
We usually don't do those until the end of the
Okay.
meeting, but does anybody have any questions concerning his transfer? If we do, we'll call you.
All right, sounds good. That's great.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
Thanks.
Next, we have the Health Department, Jessica and Nathan. They're seeking an additional, or you received a health donation, correct?
Yes.
Okay, of $12,000.
The whole donation was $20,000. We're just asking to put 12,000 of it into a line item so that we can use it to replace our computers that are still using Windows 7 and are a security threat to the network. We are told if we don't replace them, we'll be cut off the network. So this was a perfect timing to get this donation. So we just need it put into the equipment line item so we can go ahead with purchasing that. And we've gone through Mike Brown for all of it so far.
May I make a motion to accept your request?
Second.
Joan and Fred? Any further discussion?
Is that enough to cover future needs, Jesse?
Right now, I think this will replace almost every computer in the office. We're waiting to go ahead with the rest of the computers because Dell hasn't given us a quote, and two, they're back ordered because of a glass shortage, I believe. They said that they won't have anything available till at least November. So we're kind of holding off to do that, but that will put us in a very good position for several years.
And this will support present needs then? Okay. Thank you.
Did you know about this coming up, or was this like Christmas morning?
I had been informed that we were listed as a beneficiary on this will, but never told how much money we would be getting. And there were several other agencies that were listed, so I assumed it was fairly small. So when we got that check, we were quite surprised.
Like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have the Regional Sewer District. Barry, you want to borrow $500,000 from the rainy day fund, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Back, about a year ago, we did the same process in order to make us shovel ready. We do have another set of, projects in the making. I don't know if you want to know what we're doing. It's estimated at about $12 million worth of work right now. Magley, Winchester Road extended, Monmouth extended, Clems Lake extended, and Yost Woods. We included Yost Woods at the 11 o'clock hour to help fix the problem out there. We are looking for some seed money, not to exceed the 500,000. The bill is greater than that, but we're not paying any more than that right now. I was hoping by today we would have already known that we got the grant. The SRF has delayed it. We were supposed to know the end of July, the 1st of August, and here we are, 10 days later. But the SWIFT money delayed, all the SWIFT applications have delayed the SRF. Now, we're not in this, we're in it, but we're not, our program is in the standard program, the one that is already set up, the money was there and everything. The SWIFT is what everybody's asking for extra. So we're rated number 4, I believe, in the picking order. Wells County's 1. We were told we were tied with Wells County, so Ben feels very strongly that we'll get the complete packet where Baker and Tilly told us that we need 10 million and borrow, or 9.5 and borrow 3.5 to make this, to keep our bills at $93. We have to close by March with this grant. So what we'll do is you will be getting your money back as long as we get the grants, and I feel very strong we will, by March. We have to have it closed in this cycle unless SRF delays it a little bit. I can't see them delaying it much. So it's what we're asking. We paid you an interest the last time. We would do the same thing this time. Pay the interest you were getting in your rainy day fund. If we only get a portion of the grants that we're asking for, since there's a lot of people asking, we can pay this back to you in full and just cut back on some of the project. That's my plans. I don't want it to carry on, last one, I believe we had a 2-year agreement, and then we would relook at it. We paid you back in 6 months, I believe it was, 6-8 months. So I'm just here asking if we can do the same thing again. We gotta be shovel ready. Actually, we stuck our neck out on a little bit of a limb and started some, Miller from Monroe has at least started the process of getting some of the surveying done, because we are a lot further behind than what we were last time we come and asked for this. So we have to get moving to make this work. The health department gave us the list of all these areas that we needed to add to. It wasn't that we picked them. And there's more. I mean, there's a lot here. We're going to be Oak Ridge Trailer Court is on this list, which has been a problem for our area. Winnican School and Bingen Church asked if we go come on, they'd already got the farmer to let us come across their field to get to them. Their system is pretty old. It's 23 years old and they're concerned. So it's going quite a ways. I mean, we're getting out there and reaching out to a lot of people. We're at 700 now. This is gonna put us, if we go get the trailer court and out to Winnicott, we would be in the 1,100 to 1,150 accounts. So we're growing very fast. I'll have to admit, you guys all know it. You've been here through most all of you have been here through the whole process. So just asking if we can do the same thing. We appreciated it and the last one, and there's some things happening that we're grateful for, and you guys will get recognized for it here in the very near future.
Do you have a point where you'll be self-sustaining, Barry?
You say, are we gonna,
At what point will you be self-sustaining? How many
hopefully when we
residents?
level off, when we're growing, until we know where everything stands, I think we should be getting very close to that. Steve here does all our financial work for me, and he is a godsend for that, and he can maybe fill you in a little bit on that.
Yeah, Dennis, I think we added another staff member this year just because of all the additional connections that are coming online and construction that's going on. Once these connections come online, actually we're in process of now, that'll be completed by the end of the year, I think we would be self-sustaining. But with another construction project coming on, it's like, until that construction slows down, I would hate to commit to that. But I think if we stabilize right now at the number of connections that we're in the process of deploying today, I think we would be self-sustaining. But with that construction going on, it's hard to say that. Those growth pains are a little pricey.
And I'm sure you know we have considerable amount of money out on this lawsuit. That is hurting us very bad.
And have you bid the actual digging and routing of the tile? Are you using just one vendor?
Yes.
No, you bid those every time.
Yeah, we bid it every time.
Every project, we bid those. So right now, we have two firms that are working for us right now because they were the two low bidders we break it up typically in packages. And so we bid each package. So I think Fleming
got two of the packages. Van Tilburg's out of Salina got the other one.
Thank you.
And this project would probably have 3 or 4, probably 3 packages again.
Good work.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Corey and Fred.
The motion should include 1%.
I'm sorry?
The motion should include the percentage of loan.
Interest.
Well, it's this resolution, right? So we're just approving this resolution?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
This saves us a lot of work and a lot of time, and a lot of
Yes.
money. We don't have to go to the private sector to bond this, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks.
We need to write that on this. And then you just want this passed around to sign, right? Yes. Okay, next we have the sheriff. Dan? You are going to talk about the sheriff retirement and E911, is that correct? Not correct.
E911 for,
There was something sent to us concerning,
is that what I did for the additional?
oh, they don't care.
An E911 additional
Is that-
equipment and software.
Yeah, the 39,
Yeah,
908, yeah,
909,
yep, correct. Which would you like to start with?
whichever one you want to start with.
Let's go with the additional appropriation of 39,908.72. This was part of the large project we did with the secondary circuit. At the time this job was quoted out and bid it out, part of the equipment, the only vendor that responded, we basically had to lease the equipment from them. The upfront cost was very low, but we had a $5,000 a month recurring charge for the lifetime of the system. Mike was doing other work and ran across another vendor, and they were talking about that, and this vendor said, well, we do that. And he said, well, your salesman at the time said we didn't. Well, he said that salesman was no longer with us. So Mike kind of put out the bid and to see what they could do, and they could do it. The upfront charge is higher, but there's no reoccurring monthly cost. So this was not included in that large, we got the CARES Act and we did the plan for like $435,000 for the secondary circuit. This goes with that, but since this is new information, it was not included in that budget for it. So the new cost for this, to do this, was $73,396.01. My portion is what I'm asking for, because I said we didn't know this at the time. But again, like I said, this saves us $60,000 a year, basically. So to me, it's well worth the investment up front because we don't have that $5,000 a month recurring charge. So I'm asking for my portion to come out of 911 of $39,908.72.
Is it still supported monthly by this company? And
Yes, yes. And it goes right along with a lot of the equipment we had, so it works well. We're basically buying the equipment up front instead of leasing it.
and this is the equipment we're already actually paying a monthly fee on. But it's not $5,000 a month. Is that correct or not?
No, this is new equipment that we came in with the secondary circuit. So we were basically going to pay for it at $5,000 a month, but we lease the equipment. This, we're buying the equipment up front, and so we won't have that $5,000 a month recurring charge for the lifetime of the system.
I mean, yeah, I didn't word that well. We already have a maintenance agreement though?
Yes,
with-
yes.
With this company? for
Preventative
this-
maintenance agreement, yes,
Yes,
and
okay.
service agreement, yes.
Okay.
And that was included in the larger
The
package
original
bill.
pack, okay.
Correct.
So Tony, it's listed on the additional appropriation, I know it's just changed, but it's 39,909. So are we approving that, or are we approving his actual
What's the actual amount
39,908?
again, Dan? What's the cents?
72,
You can't do cents per district.
so did you
It
guys,
has to be
You have to round.
even number.
The state doesn't allow cents.
so 39,909? Yes, I'm
The
sorry.
state has no cents.
Understood. So I guess I'm requesting 39,909 for the additional.
And that'll essentially be saving you $20,000 a year?
Well, $60,000 a year. So this whole extra project was a total bill of $73,396. So in less than 2 years, doing it this way is paid for it.
Your
In
money
less than
ahead.
2 years. Pardon?
Your money ahead.
Correct. Correct.
I make a motion to approve.
Fred made a motion to approve,
I'll second.
and John seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, insurance for the sworn deputies, benefit and retirement plan. This is 3 parts. First part, we're going a drop. We have a 3-year drop right now, and we want to go to a 5-year drop, which is cost neutral. It doesn't cost anybody anything. It's just an option for the employee, for the deputy, that he can retire once he drops, basically anywhere from day 1 from he drops up to year 5. And then at the end of year 5, he's out, he's retired. So are you all familiar with what a drop is? Okay. Once you're eligible to retire, which is right now is 20 years of service, you could join the drop. And what that does is the money that is normally put into your retirement plan is put in a separate account and builds. And they can tell you if you do a 5-year drop when you retire, so your pension is frozen at 20 years. So whatever your benefit would be at 20 years, that's what it is. You're still working for 5 more years. That money just goes into a separate account. And then when you retire, you get that money back. And let's say it's $100,000. $100,000, you can take it all at once. You can have it paid out to you in monthly stipend. You can switch it over to an IRA. You can do basically whatever you want. But your pension is locked in at 20, even though you worked 25 years. Please correct me if I'm wrong in describing this. This is very general. So instead of 3, we're giving the option up to 5 years to a drop. It doesn't cost anybody anything extra. It needs approval from you and the merit board. I'm coming here first. If you approve it, we'll have a merit board to approve it. And then we go through Capital One, and then it'll come. And this all takes effect January 1 of 2022. So nothing starts this year. This is all for next year. So that's the drop aspect of it.
And that doesn't cost us anything?
That does not cost a dime. That is cost neutral. The next thing is,
What, sorry,
yes,
do we have to separate all these, or is this all in one
I would think
as far as voting?
you can do it all as one because there's certain paperwork you have to sign off on, or she'll have to sign off on if you approve it. It's up to you of how you want to do
Did you
it.
send this to us to read? I don't remember seeing anything.
Did I give that to you guys, Tony?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sent an email to me, forwarded it.
Okay. So it's however you guys want to do it.
Okay, can you just keep explaining and then we can figure
Yep.
out after he explains
Yep.
it all?
Okay, the second one we'll talk about is the benefit for line of duty death to the spouse and to dependents. Right now, if an officer's killed in line of duty, the spouse receives $200 a month. I'm wanting to increase that to $500 a month. The dependent used to get $30 a month, and I'd like to raise that to $200 a month. So we're increasing the death benefit, and this is for line of duty death only. This is not accidental death when they're off duty or anything like that. This is if they're killed in the line of duty. To help the spouse replace the funds that they've lost from the income from their spouse. So we're looking at going from $200 a month to $500 for the spouse, and if they're dependents, going from $30 to $200 for the dependent. And in line with that, because this does cost, and I'm looking at going from a retirement age of 55 down to 52 with 20 years of service. So they can retire 3 years earlier if they would like to. The benefit to that is this is a young man's game. And we have somebody on the road now that's over 60 years old working the road. Normally, statistically, their health is not good. Their health costs a lot more. So it's given an option of people just sticking around because they have to. They can retire at 52 with 20 years of service. Now, the benefit package with the earlier retirement, that does cost, and it costs our program about $16,000 more a year than what it is right now. That's paid out of the lit fund. And for next year's budget, I have included that already in the budget for next year. I was here last year and I was denied this because it was not in the budget. I was asking for additional. You guys advised me to put it in for the budget, and that's what I'm doing. So, but that does, for the benefit increase and the dependent, that does cost the plan more about $16,000, and that's paid out of the lit fund.
Is 52 kind of the standard? Because I think that's what.
It's moving that way.
That's
I
what
would
the
say
city
almost
is,
half
right?
the counties are moving that way, and I know of 6 other departments right now that are going to that. Some have gone down to 50. That's quite an increase in cost. So I don't think we're there yet, but I would like to see the 52. Any questions on that?
Is this money paid out of your sheriff fund and whatever category you pay it out of?
Yes.
That-
Yes.
My question would be, wouldn't it be better to buy an annuity or an extra supplemental insurance policy to cover the eventual demise of a person on duty?
It could be, but our plan does not offer that. And this is all through the Sheriff's Association retirement plan, and they don't offer that option. And I am not knowledgeable enough to even really answer that question of what that entails for you. I just know what our plan is.
Is that, are those numbers standard like with other counties? And then also, so for the spouse, I assume that would be for the rest of their life, and the dependent until they're of age?
Which I think now is you're looking at more towards 24 instead of 18 with how the federal government has done it. If they're still in school and that, then yes, it will go. I think it maxes out at age 24 for the dependent. And that's really cost neutral until we have a death in line of duty. We pay for it, but it doesn't affect the plan until we have a loss, basically. So if we don't have a loss, you're kind of buying insurance for it.
Wouldn't that be a better way?
And that is or is not the standard, those numbers that are, the 500 and 200?
Those are standards.
Those are standard.
Those are set by One America.
Okay.
I did not choose those. Those are
It'd be
options
cheaper
they
in the
have.
long term for us to buy that.
And the only other thing is
As
you could drop it down to age
opposed to
50 with 20 years
dying
of service
at
too.
age
But like I said,
35
that
and
cost
its
is
benefits to 75.
extremely, much more
When you're
high.
looking at 6,000 a year.
So one of the, if I
Plus
remember correctly,
dependents.
last year, the conversation got pretty heated
Mhm.
concerning retirement at age 52, that citizens can't retire at 52, so why should we ask them to fund this when they themselves can't retire at 52? What's your answer to that?
Because of the type of work that they do, the stress that the officers are under, and the health at that age goes downhill. And it becomes very expensive for us to cover those older officers. And the chance of, it's gonna sound horrible, but the chance of them dying on duty greatly increases as they get older. We had a paramedic in southern Indiana yesterday, working a patient in back ambulance, have a heart attack and die. He was an older medic, and so that's the main reason. I think it's cheaper, and we don't have officers that we're paying more sticking around because they have to. They will tend to retire earlier if they're allowed to. So we can hire a younger officer, which costs us less, and for benefits and medical stuff will cost us less too than keeping on officers over the age of 52. That is the general benefit to the program, and that's a national trend going everywhere with law enforcement, firefighters, getting them out because they're staying around longer than they probably should be.
And this is basically for next year's budget.
This is next year's budget, correct?
So this is kind of more informative right now for getting ready for when we do budgets next month.
Well, yes, but I need to get this ball rolling for Co-America, because if I don't have this approved by budget time at the latest, then it won't take effect. I have to have stuff turned in probably, I'd like to have stuff turned in October. That gives them the time frame to get everything done. But I have to get your permission first, then I have to go to the merit board to get their permission, and then it goes back out to Co-America.
So the first option, or the first thing that you described, costs nothing.
Correct.
Second costs 16,000?
Between the two of them,
Okay.
it's a package deal. Between the two, it's just over $16,000. I don't have the exact number here, but it was put in for the budget for 22.
So for me, at least, I think that's a great idea. It's a great plan. Procedurally, I'm just looking at the budget and the lit fund, you know, and we have a lot of work we're gonna have to do to try and get that fund and some of the other ones figured out to get them to a point where they're cash flow positive. So I'm a little bit nervous about saying yes until we get into the weeds on everything and try and figure out how it all is gonna come together. That's just me. I mean, I like the idea, but I just want to see the whole picture before we start messing with the budget for next year. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I guess I'm not following.
Well, on the projections, it looks like we're going to be with the budget the way that it is, we're cash flow negative 212,000 in that lit fund next year. So this would be, the 16 is inside of that. So when we do the whole budget process, that's what we're trying to figure out is how to get that back positive. So I'm a little bit nervous to start locking down any piece of it until we know the whole picture. Although I think it's a great idea.
But also understand with the budget put in there, that is with 2 new officers and equipping them, cars and everything that we're also talking about, which is a huge expense. But
Right.
that budget includes that. So that's one reason why you're seeing that increase.
And that's a great example though. That's one where it's like, okay, if we can't get it cash positive, what do we want more? A new car, a new officer, or do we want it to do the retirement thing? So I feel like I kind of want to see the whole picture before we make decisions on what we do and don't take.
Is this the 1170 lit fund?
Yeah.
And like I said, this is just giving permission if through the budget it doesn't fund, I just don't turn this into Co-America, basically. And I'm fine with getting I don't know what's, the motion to include that this still needs to be approved at budget time before I turn it in. But at least if it is approved, I have all the signatures and I can zip it down there. I'm fine with that type of a motion. Also, depending on what happens at the September budget hearings.
How are we going to fund this? Are we going to put it in a separate line item that we're going to accumulate dollars and cents over a period of time to be paid out at some unknown date? Or is this going to be an on-time occurrence? Do we pay it out of general budget or something like a death?
You mean if someone dies?
Yes.
No, the insurance handles that. It doesn't, we don't pay it. A third-party insurance vendor through Co-America actually pays the benefit through the retirement fund through ISA. The money doesn't come out of our county general, I believe. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, sheriff's retirement comes out of the commissioner's budget.
But it's set there, so it's nothing that you guys will have to make monthly withdrawals out of county general. It's through the insurance, the retirement fund.
Thank you.
And the 16,000 essentially premiums on an insurance policy?
For the increase of the benefits and the lower retirement age, going from 55 to 52. Yes, that's premium payments.
What do we pay right now? What is the cost right now?
I don't know that answer.
16,000 a year less? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know what that exact line item is.
Are you looking for a percentage or?
No, I just wanted to know how much do we pay for this insurance? What is it costing the county right now?
Yeah.
Is it costing us 100 and then we're going to 116,000, or is it only costing us 50? How much does it, just curious, what's it cost us?
I send sheriff's retirement every year, but
That's what it's in.
yeah, I send the sheriff's retirement quarterly, and then also out of there's another fund that, the fees that they collect goes to them. But I send them $40,750 each quarter, and that's what's gonna go up,
Yes.
yes. So I send it quarterly.
So 40,000 to 44,000 quarterly, roughly.
So 44, yeah.
You said it's in sheriff's retirement, which is,
Right now, so this year, their sheriff's retirement is coming out of the lit public safety. For 2022, we put it back in the commissioner's budget to come out of county general. So the yearly comes out of, right now, lit public safety, next year will come out, back out of county general. And then there is a sheriff's retirement fund that they collect fees throughout the month. And then each quarter, I empty out that fund and send what is sitting there to One America.
And that's what the officers pay out of their paycheck, their bi-weekly paycheck,
And then,
their contribution.
yes, and I send One America each paycheck after payroll, I send that to you. So they get like 3 payments technically.
So with that 16,000 a year, it looks like it'd be an 8.3% increase overall from going 176,000 to 192,000.
So you need something from us though in order to go to the next board
To go to
to
the
keep the
mayor board
process?
to see if they will approve it. And at that point, I'm on hold until we go through the budget to see if the money is still there.
I'd make a motion to approve, contingent upon, results of the budget hearings.
Are you approving all aspects of it or just one particular?
Well,
All aspects, okay?
Or if you want to break that other one out, we could just approve that one.
The drop,
Yeah, because that
Cost.
doesn't affect anything you said.
yeah, that, we can do it separate, because that is cost neutral, it costs us nothing to do that.
make a motion to approve the drop independently, and then the rest of it based upon the, budget hearings.
Second.
I have a motion from Fred and a second from Corey. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And then your signatures, and then
And then
when I get merit board signatures, if I do, then I'll get you your copies with the originals.
You want?
Thank you.
This is just,
44,000.
this isn't
Oh,
like saying we're going to do it,
Sheriff's
right?
retirement.
This is just saying
That's
it's
just what we
contingent on,
Basically, until I send that down to Co-America, it doesn't happen. So I guess you're putting your faith in me that I won't send that down there, because once you sign it, yes, if I would send it down there, they're gonna do it. But I just won't send it down until after the budget hearings.
Julie Marie, what do you advise?
makes sense.
I advise that if
That
that
makes
is a
sense.
caveat, then you put something in
can't spend
the
it
motion
before your budget.
specifically saying that it's a contingency to be sent down based upon approval in the budget.
And I think that was the motion.
Yes.
So as long as you have that and it's clearly spelled out in the minutes, that should cover everything.
Just down here.
Yep.
Did you have anything else?
No.
Just- Okay.
I did pass out some papers to you. That's just for informational. There's one, thank you. There's one, it said like budgetary quote. That was information from the ERS with all our new radio systems. I did that for insurance purposes because, when Star called me about checking things, how we're insured, and we were way underinsured for our radio equipment. So that, what you see would replace if we had a tornado go through and take out a tower or something like that, and our little house that's at the bottom of the tower, it's broken down by North Tower, South Tower, and the jail, that's what it would cost to replace our equipment and our towers if we had a catastrophic failure of something. So that was, it's just informational to you. And the second sheet, I believe, was we were, basically did an audit through our liability insurance. They came and did an on-site visit. And it basically is an email from them saying that we are doing a good job trying to mitigate any slip, trip, fall hazards, how we're running the sheriff's office, the building, and any signs that we need to improve, and there were none. They said we're doing an outstanding job at the building for liability insurance reasons, and I'm just giving you a copy, and the commissioners will also get a copy of that too. So that was just informational only.
Thank you. Okay, next, Tony has provided us with an IC code, and on the agenda, it says the county fiscal body shall review at its first meeting in August the estimated property tax levy limits and the estimated reductions due to circuit breakers for each taxing unit. The county fiscal body will prepare and distribute a written recommendation for the taxing units, or the county auditor will distribute the minutes of the meeting to all taxing units after the minutes are approved by the fiscal body. Tony presented us with, everyone should have this.
I think I emailed it out at some point as well, but I wanted to bring another copy just in case.
So basically, we need to,
Really, we just need a motion to request an open invitation to any taxing unit that would want to come at budget hearings, like an open invitation. Not required to come because that law changed in 2016. But I think a lot of counties complain that it was a colossal waste of time. It takes almost a whole day just to have them all come, and it's non-binding. So yeah, just a motion that be sent to all taxing units as an open invitation, but they aren't required.
Does anyone want the taxing units to come during budget time? Or
That
do we just
sounds
want to have an
reasonable.
open invitation?
Yeah.
And easy. I'll make a motion to invite whoever wants to come.
Fred made a motion,
I'll second that.
John seconds. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And you'll let them know, Tony?
Yes, I will, well, actually, after they all received the same thing that you have, but officially I don't send anything to them until these minutes are approved next month. But they know, so.
Okay, thank you. Next is the county attorney. So it looks like it's the PTO policy, so I'm assuming that's Mark and Julie Marie? That's Mark?
Mark's gonna do all the presenting today.
Okay.
Mark and Shannon, policy Shannon.
I tried texting him to come back and dial a number, but it's the only number I have.
copy of this?
You guys already have copies of that proposed policy?
Yeah, I think
Now,
I did email it.
Is that some questions?
Just in case.
I do too, thank you.
Did you get an email? If you sent it to my mailbox. County.
Been discussing moving to a PTO policy to replace vacation and sick days for some time. And Shannon, now that she's come on board, has done a lot of work on this, and we appreciate her efforts. Met with the commissioners numerous times after the commissioners meeting and have been working through this proposed policy for paid time off. And so basically, Shannon, if you want to kind of summarize what we're combining, what we're keeping out, bereavement, it's recommended to keep bereavement out. I'll let her cover that. But came up with this schedule that shows, based upon years of service, accumulation factor and how many days of PTO that the employees would accumulate. That would begin upon hire date. You begin to accumulate PTO at the time of hire. Under a present policy, when we have new employees come on, they have no vacation for the first year whatsoever. They accumulate sick days at the rate of 1/2 day per month, up to a maximum of, 30 days, depends on length of service. So we have some long-term employees that'll have actually 30 days of vacation, or 30 sick days accumulated, which translates into, I forget how many hours, six weeks of time. So anyway, the policy combines vacation, combines sick days. It has a provision in it that upon severance of employment, that a portion up to 50% of those could be paid out. That provides some benefit above what we have now, but it also gives them some sick time that they can utilize if they would have, some sort of catastrophic event or long-term illness. So anyway, I'll let Shannon kind of go through and explain how this has been combined and why, and what we're doing with bereavement, and then we can open it up for some discussion.
So just so you guys are all on the same page as us, PTO is paid time off. And typically paid time off is offered as an accrued benefit leave, which means that instead of being awarded your vacation, for example, the way that we have it now, your vacation is awarded on your anniversary. This is awarded per hour or per day or per month that you work. So you earn it over time instead of once per year. So the general purpose of a PTO policy is to have a lot more flexibility for employees when they take time off. So this policy, we did leave out obviously paid holidays and funeral leave benefits. The original policy that was written a couple of years ago did not leave out funeral leave, but we decided to. We think that bereavement is one of those things that nobody really wants to go through, and we shouldn't include that in this because it is a
benefit to the county employee that's kind of, because we all have hearts. And then we just went into the procedure of the policy, and it talks about that employees start to accrue on day one versus, like Mark said, they don't earn vacation until 1 year of service right now. So again, it just speaks to that flexibility that it offers employees when they need to take time for whatever the case may be.
So one question I got in the email, or I think we all received, but hopefully I get this right because I dozed off while I was reading the email. But somebody wants to know what, we make this switch, and there are people who have some accrued time right now. Do they get to carry that over and not lose it?
So we did talk about a transition plan. I didn't know if we wanted to do everything at once or we want to talk about PTO first and then transition after.
Then we
can
talk about
do
transition later.
one of each or everything at the same time. It's up to you guys.
No, that's a good question, because yes, you'd have to have a conversion of people that have banked, vacation time, sick days now, so that they don't lose it. But we also put a provision in this policy that beginning in October, individuals who have accumulated sick days can use, I think, what did we say, up to 10 sick days as PTO to encourage them to use those instead of just losing them.
Right.
So the transition that we discussed, I did a bunch of research on transitions from lump sum to PTO, and I listed out quite a few options, and then we met with our group and kind of went through all those options. And the one that we landed on was convert vacation balances as of December 31st, 2021 to PTO, and then no lump sums will be awarded in 2022. Sick days are converted at 50% to PTO. And then, like Mark said, from October 1st to December 31st, employees will be allowed to use up to 10 sick days as interim PTO. And then everything that you have as of January 1, 2022 is considered PTO. And this is under the assumption that we're able to get the timekeeping system in place by then.
Yeah, it's real critical that this works hand in hand with the new timekeeping system. So it needs to work together. So the idea is to let individuals now, upon severance of employment, we do not pay out sick days. But in order to provide it's kind of a benefit for both employer and employee, we allow them to carry over a portion of those sick days.
Right.
But then use some of them between October and December so that they don't just lose them all.
So the numbers on this policy, were these the same numbers that we hashed out 2 or 3 years ago?
You mean the accrual rates?
Yes.
No, they're different. And the reason that they're different is because the numbers that were agreed upon a couple years ago were actually a little bit less than what is current. So right now, at a certain point in an employee's career, so by 1 year of service, they have accrued 11 days, and the policy before only offered 10.
And we did that because we decided that they could use their sick days for regular vacation if they wanted, where they couldn't do that before.
Right, so that's what I'm saying is that by the time that I reach June 1st of 2022, I'll have 5 vacation days and 6 sick days. So 11 total of either sick time or vacation time. So the previous PTO policy only allowed for 10, so the employee was losing time. They were losing benefit leave in that policy. So they would be earning less per year.
But they can use 10 days to wherever they wanted, where before they could only use 5.
Right.
What happens if somebody needs to use more days than they have? Is it unpaid? Do they face some type of punishment? I mean,
So they would be available to take time unpaid. It kind of depends on the situation. Obviously, if you have an employee who's in a 1 year of service in an FMLA situation, then they would use all of their PTO because that's what our policy for FMLA states right now. But then the time would fall to unpaid, and that's by federal law. Whereas in the event, if you have an employee who maybe hasn't earned a year of service and isn't eligible for FMLA, they would still be required to use PTO, but then the time would be unpaid. They might be granted a leave of absence depending on the situation. It would be unpaid. In the event that it's a random kind of sporadic absence and they don't have PTO, it would fall to the attendance policy.
I almost think this needs more discussion because this was hashed out for months, for years, and the council came up with what they were comfortable with paying. And now you're saying that these numbers are over and above what the council was comfortable with 2 years ago.
Right.
So when you were saying lose time, I wasn't around for those discussions. So when you say lose time, what do you mean by, how are they losing time?
So when I get to 1 year of service as a new employee, I will earn 5 vacation days, which can be used for anything that I want. I can take them in either 4 or 8 hour increments. I also earn 1/2 sick day per month. Yep,
Okay.
for an entire year, which is 6 total sick days. Those, there's some limitations on what you can technically use them for. So by the time that I hit 1 year of service, I've accrued 5 days vacation and 6 sick days. So the previous PTO policy only allowed employees to accrue 10 days per year. So while yes, that is right, that you can use that time for anything you want versus being limited to vacation versus sick time, employees still were losing 1 day of, regardless of what the type of leave is, they were still losing 1 day of benefit with that new policy. So that's why I upped it to 12.
1 day versus what?
1 day versus they're gaining 1 day under this policy.
But I'm not following along. Obviously there's 1 day difference in the policy, but they're losing, is that all it is or like to the current policy or?
So there was a PTO policy that was written in 2019, I think? 2019, that was brought to council and discussed. And what happened was it was discussed at length, and then eventually everybody said, wait a second, we need to get timekeeping in place before we can go to PTO because this is too much to handle on paper. So what that policy says is what Yvette was saying, that offered 10 days and they were able to use it for whatever they wanted. Well, I revised that policy. I literally took that document and changed it.
Okay.
So my new policy has employees with an additional day of benefit leave versus the old policy that was previously presented to council, which had employees losing a day of benefit leave.
So they had 10 days to do whatever, sick or PTO.
Right.
And now it's 6 and 5, 6 sick and 5 PTO.
And I'm proposing 12 for whatever you want.
And that's just for the first year though.
Right.
Because I'm looking at my notes from that discussion, comparing them to this. And back then, the difference between the current policy and what was proposed was basically 7 extra days from old to new, plus the fact that you could use all of your PTO versus sick you can only sometimes use, right? So you're getting 7 days plus the use of the whole thing,
Right.
which was very generous.
And that policy also included bereavement leave in it as well. So that is a factor that we need to take into consideration. This one does not. So that policy, yes, you could use it for whatever you wanted, but in the event that you had a funeral that you had to go to, you were going to be forced to use PTO under that policy, whereas we took that out for this. So they weren't really, yes, you're kind of 6 of one, half dozen the other, whether you're gaining or losing under that one.
We had also talked, go ahead, Corey.
No, go ahead.
Some of these look pretty close, but to what it used to be. But if I go all the way through and compare the new one, so like for that first, what was 0 to 1 years, what is now 0 to 2 years, you're basically gaining 1 day plus the use of your sick. The 3 to 5 year, which is roughly the same as 2 to 7 years, you're gaining 2 days. For 6 to 9, which is comparable to the 8, you're gaining 3 days. For 10 to 14, though, you're gaining 11 days.
Right, and
That's a huge one.
I was under the impression from the various conversations that I had with a bunch of different people that the way that the county wanted to move forward to award longevity was through PTO.
Which I think is true, yeah. At least last year's council was, and this year may be different, but last year it was, we don't want to do longevity pay.
Right.
We want to reward it through benefits instead. So that, I mean, that's accurate. That's just a big amount, but maybe that's the number we want. And then 15 plus years is adding 9 days. So basically your categories are +1, +2, +3, +11, +9. So your total is going from, plus the fact that you're getting all your sick days. I just want to kind of get those numbers so it's in everybody's head. So that 10 to 14 is the biggest jump.
And I did separate years of service out into one additional category because I didn't feel like with current policy there was enough jumps to award people for staying. Like, it's kind of like middle seniority. There wasn't a lot there.
So if you have 17 years of service, you can accrue 35 days that year, but you can't accrue any more than 480 hours total.
Correct.
Okay.
And we did put some provisions in here to prevent employees from taking 12 weeks off at once, unless it's FMLA. There's something, a stipulation in scheduled and unscheduled PTO that they can't use more than 2 weeks, using PTO. They can't use more than 2 weeks in a 30-day period unless otherwise approved by their department head. So it would prevent an employee from just walking in one day and saying, hey, I'm going to take 6 weeks off today. You have to have that conversation with your department head to make sure that the department can still run if your absence is longer than 2 weeks.
So the top category, when we had discussed it, we were only comfortable with 7 extra.
This is actually less.
You
'Cause
said
now
11.
you're only adding 1, well, 11 for the one category, but for 0 to 2, you're only adding 1. 3 to 5, you're only adding 2. 6 to 9, you're only adding 3. But then 10 to 14 is where you're adding 11, and 15 plus is where you're adding 9. So it's almost like your newer people aren't getting as much as what we had talked about, but your older are getting more.
Dennis?
Tony would like a comment.
Keep in mind, this all was precipitated because of the CARES money and the timekeeping system and the fact that we have to have something implemented by the end of this year. So it kind of put a rush on things. And then with Shannon coming in, it's really helping to get us there. We've been having regular meetings with the timekeeping people, advanced time management. So that is, it's still going to be a process. So our intention at this point is our office will kind of be the guinea pigs and we'll be first, and then we'll do it as much as we can with departments and as we're figuring things out. And I correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon, but I think what we're thinking is that implementation means you have that actually working and implemented in an office or in a department. So that's the intention, and the rest of the stuff kind of goes along with that. But it's still going to be a process. It's not like this is happening tomorrow. But we will continue the meetings with advanced time management. Steve is on that committee. So it's a process going forward, but we're under the gun as far as getting at least one department implemented so we don't lose the $28,000 or whatever that we paid for the system. So that's.
And we need to have it implemented by January 1, is that what you said?
So how we kind of see it moving forward
We
is,
can't go to the PTO won't take effect until we have, like, people have got to be on timekeeping because the system's going to calculate it for us. Whereas right now, we don't know how many days, if Susie calls from some office and asks how many days she has, we don't know, and it is not in the payroll system. So we have to, the department has to be on timekeeping, clocking in and out before we would go to the PTO.
so I think how we kind of see this all playing out is that we're going to essentially implement what our current policy is and new policy. And we're going to make sure that this works and old policy works. And once everybody is on timekeeping, we're going to flip the switch and turn this on. But we have to give this to them in order for them to program it and say, okay, this works how it's supposed to work, essentially. That's why we're talking about this now. This is not gonna take place tomorrow, it's not gonna take place in the next month. It is totally contingent upon the fact that we have timekeeping implemented for the entire county.
We want to have it implemented by January 1, correct?
Have to.
Yeah.
Well.
Or we lose, well, we don't have to.
There's
we
a,
lose
there's a
28 grand.
stipulation under the CARES Act that says that it has to be implemented by January 1, yes, but we're gonna try to skate by with a couple of departments because it's not possible to get that done by the end of the year for all the departments.
That we're actually utilizing the software on January 1, that we're actually utilizing the software, at least for a portion of the county.
Right, right.
I know that if you, let's say you accrue 480 hours, does it also keep track of how much of that is vacation and how much is sick time? Or is it accrued?
So
How does that work?
In the timekeeping system, we're essentially gonna program vacation like the policy currently stands, sick time like the policy currently stands, and PTO. So we're gonna use vacation and sick time for all of the departments as they get implemented with timekeeping. And then once everybody is done, we're gonna turn off vacation and sick and turn on PTO for everyone.
So once you've accrued it, you can use it however you want,
Yes.
as vacation time, basically.
Once you've accrued it, it can be, PTO can be used for whatever, but it's intended to be used in any absence, no matter what, with the exception of these two items in here.
And it has to be approved by the department head. No more than 2 weeks of PTO can be used at a time unless the department head approves more than 2 weeks. And then upon severance of employment, we put a provision in that says it'd be paid out at 50%, but employees may not take more than 1 week of PTO prior to 3 days before a planned retirement. Because what we're in now is we've got employees who earn vacation based upon anniversary date. And so you have employees that have a block of vacation. They plan on, they know when their retirement's gonna be. They don't tell anybody when their retirement's gonna be. They take all of their vacation and they hit their anniversary date, and then they get another block of vacation, and then they retire.
So they end up taking 8 weeks at one time.
Yeah,
And this is trying to help
That happens at
with
8.
that situation.
Yes, sir.
Can PTO be denied?
Yes, absolutely. It's
Okay.
at the sole discretion of the department head or whoever the department head deems appropriate to
Yep.
deny it. So for you, like your,
Chief?
Yeah.
Or whatever. Okay, thank you.
and it's all gonna be electronic with timekeeping too. There's not gonna be any paper transactions or anything like that. It's all gonna be done online.
What impact will this have on hiring part-time to cover shortages? If we're giving an extra 11 days, which is 2 weeks in a day, on small departments that have a lot of seniority, how is this going to impact our budget and them coming before us wanting more part-time help now?
Well, I think that kind of goes back to what Dan said, is that it's at the discretion of the department head. So a lot of offices, from what I've seen in my short tenure, have busy seasons and slow seasons and things like that. So the department head would need to manage their department in the sense of when they're busiest versus when they're slow, and encouraging employees to take time off, in my opinion.
And avoid the overtime.
Right.
Or avoid, having to hire part-time.
Yeah, Barry.
Can we donate time to another employee if they're sick?
That was originally in the PTO policy that was talked about a couple years ago, and we took it out. It's a very messy process when you get it into a timekeeping system, and then you also get into the situation of, well, I gave you a week, 2 years ago, now I'm sick and I need you to give me a week back, and the employee doesn't want to do it, and then you have fights, and I have to do a lot of work, and, that's not the goal.
Stan?
I think we've considered this for years, and we looked at it as an advantage to both our government management system and also for the employee, because, as it is now, if the employee wants to take sick time, they have to be sick. And so, they're, fortunately, if they're not sick, they don't have to use their sick time, but then they lose that time from year to year. And from a management standpoint, it would require us, the department heads, to police that situation to where we would have to say, well, were you really sick or weren't you? So moving to a PTO system, gives the employee much more flexibility. It takes that policing away from the department heads. It's like, it doesn't matter if you were sick or if you were going fishing. It really doesn't matter. It's your time. So one of the other advantages that it gives to the employee is they're allowed to carry over all their PTO time up to a maximum of 480 hours. So they can accrue time and carry it over, whereas like I say, the sick time they weren't able to. So a couple of the hurdles that we had to jump through have been essentially or are being taken care of. And one of those was the timekeeping system, which is currently being implemented with the help of the committee and Shannon to accomplish that timekeeping system management. But the other thing that was always in question and kind of created a hurdle was the conversion. So I think once again, the committee has been very careful to make sure that the employee was not losing out as we convert to PTO. You know, and like Mark said, as we go from October to December 31st, they will be allowed to use their sick time as PTO time. So we're trying to be generous on their part with the conversion to PTO. So there, with Shannon coming in, with going to a timekeeping system, and with looking at conversion that accommodates the employee, I think a lot of things have happened in the last few months that will really help us move to just a better system for everybody, for department heads, for employees. And so, you know, I do agree that I think we're moving towards rewarding longevity with the benefit time. And this really allows us to do that for the employee that's been dedicated for years. You know, it is hopefully a benefit to both sides, management and employee both. And with the timekeeping system, it will help in the auditor's department to keep track of everything. And the employee will know exactly where they're at, and department head will know exactly where they're at. It's just, I think if we can pull this off successfully with everybody's help, I think it'll be a good thing for everybody.
I will say, I think getting people some time off in the first year, that's becoming standard anywhere you go. I think it's a good idea. We want to remain competitive, I think, to get and keep good employees. And then I'll have a question of if somebody is sick for, let's say, 4 days, 5 days, do they have to provide a doctor's excuse?
Under current policy, from what I understand, no. However, again, it goes back to FMLA. If they've been employed for longer than a year, FMLA requires that 3 or more days of sickness, other than certain things like a virus or the flu or things like that, they're required to fill out that paperwork. And our current FMLA policy is that it runs concurrently with vacation and sick time, so we pull that. So doctor's notes, no, from what I understand, but it kind of depends on the situation, whether an employee would just be off for 4 days because they're sick or whether they have to file.
Can you repeat again what the carryover for current employees?
You mean the transition plan?
Yeah.
I didn't know, sorry, I didn't know if we wanted to do that separately. This was attached to the PDF as well, but I pulled it apart. Do you have one of these? Do you want these? Do you have the PDF? You got the PDF? No, thank you.
Thank you.
So like I said, I did quite a bit of research on transitions, how other companies and government entities had done it in the past. I brought a couple scenarios to the team that I've been working with on this, and this was the one that we decided on. Obviously, some of these dates are contingent upon when timekeeping gets implemented, but we put in the dates to give you guys an idea of what the time frame would look like if we could get this done by January 1st.
So from October 1st to December 31st, is that 2021 or 2022?
2021. I was told to add that, and apparently I missed it.
Yeah, I know this has been a long conversation for a long time, and I know a lot of people put a lot of hard work into it, so I'm very appreciative of all the hard work everybody's done. You know, I like the numbers. I think, you know, they're skewed a lot more than what we originally had, but I think to me at least, as long as we're saying, you know, which I think has been the goal from the beginning, this is how we're rewarding longevity. You know, we're not doing it with pay, we're doing it this way. then I like this. You know, if it's not for me, it's not a both. This is the way to do it. So I like that. I do. It's a lot more on the 10 to 14 and the 15 plus. It's a lot more. But with that in mind, that makes sense to me. So I'm in support of that. The only question I had is the bereavement part of it. I know I don't have a problem with that being separate either. I know one of the reasons we had talked about keeping it separate was so we don't get in the messy phase of trying to decide, you know, is this really your spouse? Are you just living with them? You know, do they count as your brother when really they're your half brother? You know, so I don't know what do you guys think on that, or how did you, I know there's a lot of hurdles to cross, but what was the thought on crossing that one?
I mean, I've reviewed the bereavement policy and it's pretty standard, the policy that we have right now. It's 5 days for this specific relationship, which is spouse, parent, child, or sibling, and then 3 days for the next step down, 1 day for the next step down, and then obviously there's always the option to take unpaid. Bereavement is one of those things, I think Bree can say that we've only had, maybe 4 in the last couple of years?
We really don't use bereavement.
Right. So I don't think that it's something that we would necessarily have to worry about. We would be able to put a provision in the policy that says that we could require documentation if we wanted to, from the service or proving the relationship or whatever the case may be. From my experience, it's not something that people take advantage of. Nobody wants to lie about a death.
The bigger issue is more if they don't necessarily meet it because, you know, for example, they're not actually a spouse. You know, they've been living together for 20 years.
Right.
And they may have that same attachment, but they're not actually a spouse.
And that
What
can
do
be
we do
cleared
with them?
up pretty quickly by just adding in domestic partner into the policy, so.
Well, yeah, and there's a million different versions, and that was kind of the fear with bereavement was we're never going to think of all of them.
Right.
So I don't know I don't know, maybe we don't care, but maybe it's worth adding a clause or something.
Yeah, I
because-
remember that discussion too, and I think that was exactly why we wanted to include it in PTO, but, so I don't know how that final decision, whether that would be left to the department head or whether it would be left to the HR as far as whether it was.
Should be the HR.
Yeah.
Needs to be consistent.
Well, you define the bereavement policy pretty broadly, so we have to add in, we probably will add in domestic partner, add that in. So you have your policy, you know, fairly broad. And in the event it doesn't fit any of the categories, then they have PTO.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's always going to be one in the course of my career that slips through the cracks, and that's just the nature of any policy. But from what I've experienced, people don't typically take advantage of something like that because nobody really wants to go deal with that anyways. So people aren't looking for excuses to lie about a death in their family.
Or instead of trying to add in some of those, you could just have, you know, either we just don't worry about it, or you could add in maybe one sentence that says, you know, the HR coordinator can have the discretion to determine that a relationship is equivalent to this, even though it's not. That could be messy too, though. So I don't know. Just raise the issue, I guess. I don't know what you guys think.
I think the thought was that bereavement is fairly seldomly used, and rather than trying to come up with some sort of fair way to incorporate it into PTO for everyone, it makes more sense to keep it separate because it is used fairly seldom, and make it a benefit that's fairly, you know, standard for bereavement policies, and keep it out of the computation and the accrual for PTO. You know, why try to incorporate a benefit that is used very infrequently into the accumulation factor and PTO days for everyone?
Mhm.
You know, when it's only going to affect a very few number of people during the year.
So just keep it between the HR and the department head or supervisor, whoever it falls to.
So what do you need from us?
Julie Marie wanted to interject something.
The only thing I wanted to mention was to bring it to the new members' attention. Building on what Stan said, the purpose behind this, the reason why PTO started being discussed in the first place was as a cost-saving measure to the county, because we were having people that were leaving and being cashed out on their vacation to the tune of thousands of dollars. and it was really becoming a financial issue and a strain on the budget. So this now, with a cap on how much can be taken out, specifically indicating that, that will eventually offset any slight increase in having additional paid off time in accordance with the new policy. So just wanted to let the new people know that's part of where it's come from and what it's intended to alleviate.
So if we pass this, you will not be coming back to us anytime soon with the longevity option?
Well, that's kind of part of what I emailed last week with my, wage package proposal, is that I am open to all ideas and any feedback is appreciated. My goal, I don't want to get too far off course, but my goal with that package is to tie in all of the ideas and the resolutions and everything that has been done in the last couple of years to give it a consistent procedure for every employee and something that we can give the employees to say, this is probably where you're going to stand in 5 years. This is the goal. So I'm not set necessarily on longevity. That's not something that I necessarily want or need or whatever the case may be. But I do need you guys to give me your feedback on what you would want to see in that package.
This particular policy comes to you as a recommendation by the commissioners. I think the commissioners, have the, are in charge of coming up with employee benefits and the employee benefit package. To the extent, though, that there's a fiscal impact, then obviously we want to have the input from the county council and the approval of the county council. And because this policy states that, and it is a change in policy, that upon severance of employment, that PTO would be cashed out up to at 50%, then that's the fiscal impact. And so if the council is in agreement with this policy, and you say that you approve this policy, then it's going to go back to the commissioners to be implemented. And the commissioners then will make final modifications to the policy, probably make a change in the language of bereavement, and then we'll get it implemented and get it up and working with timekeeping.
Just out of curiosity, are there any surrounding counties that are on a PTO system, or are they all?
I don't know, to be honest. I didn't get that far, but I do know that Adams Memorial is on PTO, and I believe that this policy, when it was originally written a couple years ago, is a pretty good shadow of that policy. So that's about all I got. I mean, I will say from my experience outside of Adams County, this is the way that the rest of the state is moving because of the benefits that it offers to the employee. Like Corey said, it's not realistic to expect an employee with 15 years of service to come in and earn nothing for a year. It's just not, it's not the way the world's turning anymore.
Right.
Going on that, Fred, though, I would be interested to see how this policy compares to other county governments. Is it comparable to their numbers? Is it skewed? I would like to see that information.
Not to kind of drag this on, but I do appreciate that last piece about cashing out, and not necessarily for the 50% for the savings piece of it. I mean, I do like that, obviously, but a bigger thing for me is that PTO is meant to be, vacation is so you refresh. So your employee comes back productive, they want to stay, and paying them for their time instead of them actually using it, they don't get that benefit, and we don't get that benefit. So that's a separate reason why I've liked that, and I'm glad to see that is included in there. So just an extra piece I appreciate.
And the original policy that was written had a cap of 280 hours paid at 100% versus this one is 480 paid at 50. So we're technically going down in terms of payout.
And you're pushing that, regardless, you're pushing them to say,
Right.
use your time, because that's what it's there for, is for
Right.
you to come back refreshed.
Yep. So, anything else?
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to drag this on too. The lump sum in that email that we received, they had some concern about scheduling. If someone's using their PTO, or I guess their vacation days the way it is now, they're used to getting them just at their anniversary or the first of the year, I'm not sure how it, and now starting January 1st, they would have nothing. It'd all be accrued through the the duration of the year, is there an option? And this would also include for new employees, new hires, where they're stuck at zero for the, I guess, until the first full year, they have a solid week of benefits, but to start off at a prorated, like a 3-month, however they're all along on probation, they have a probationary period.
It's 180 days, so it's 6 months, which ties into the 6 months that is in this policy that states that employees accrue it but are not eligible to take it unless they're sick. If they terminate voluntarily or involuntarily in the first 6 months, they forfeit all that PTO.
But they can use it.
If they're sick, like if
In
they
the first 6 months.
specifically-
Right.
Yeah, in the first 6 months.
It begins to accrue on the date of hire.
Right.
Right.
During the probationary period, they can't use it as vacation. They can't take PTO unless they're sick. And so what it does is it starts to accumulate that sick benefit right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they would terminate before the end of the probationary period, it's not paid out, it's forfeited. But once they hit the 6-month period, then it's vested, and then they can start using PTO. They don't have to be sick.
I just wanted to clarify that
PTO.
they did
And
get it.
essentially,
of
I don't know if I was
benefits.
understanding it different, but essentially a tenured employee, while they may not have earned their vacation for the year, they'll earn it as the year goes. They'll have some to use that they're carrying over,
Correct.
and they'll just replace it.
I would be shocked if there was a large majority of employees who didn't carry over anything into PTO. So I would assume that most employees on day one of this policy being effective are going to have something in their bank to use.
That's reasonable.
So like for me, I'm gonna have the least because I've only been here for, 2 months now, 3 months now. So but an employee who's been here for 10 years, they will have something that's gonna be carried over. So even though they wouldn't normally get their award until maybe August, they're still gonna have something in their bank to use on January 1st or whenever this policy goes into effect.
No, that's a good question, but yeah, that'll carry over. So people who are already employed are gonna, no doubt, have hours January 1 to use.
Dennis, you were very involved in this a couple years ago and very vocal. What do you think about this now?
Well, in the overall scheme of things, it's going to cost us more money. I thought that was the original discussion. But we are in a unique situation today by way of workforce development and attraction.
Right.
And I think this is the step forward that we need to keep employees and benefit the long-term workforce. And this is one of the mechanisms we can do that with. And I'm happy for their work and quite amazed at the area they've covered and the thought that was put into it. Quite a good job.
So is the council happy with those numbers?
I am. I like rewarding longevity this way. This is, I think, the right way to do it, and so I'm in favor of it. So I guess, unless there's something else, I'll make a motion to approve this.
I'll say that.
Corey made a motion, Fred seconded. Any further discussion? Keith, you've been quiet. Do you want to add anything before we vote? Okay. Okay, I'll call it to a vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
We'll get it implemented.
Thank you. Appreciate the work.
I don't think you can leave yet. Seems like there was something else on your list.
Yeah, we had that resolution, I understand, and I think Julie Marie sent that out to you, and Barry's already been up here and talked about it, so you approved the resolution concerning borrowing on the line of credit again for project number 4 for the sewer district, I believe, so thank you very much. That quite honestly worked out fantastically for the district. On project number 3, that was closed out, I think in May when we had the closing, and then the $500,000 was repaid with interest to the county. And that enabled the district to really leverage funds, get that project engineered, go to SRF, received an incredible award from SRF of over $8 million on a $10 million project. And so project number 3 is well underway. You've probably seen some of the project areas where they're working. So this is now the district's pursuing project number 4. It seems that the fiscal landscape is as good, if not better this year as it was last year, which is surprising because we thought last year we would never see that type of funding again in terms of grant dollars. But now with the infrastructure money that's been turned loose on the state, the money that SRF has, the time is right to strike. And so the district again is working on another round of projects, approximately $12 million worth of projects. We're hopeful that we'll get somewhere between $8 and $9 million in funds. The other thing that we wanted to talk about was under the ARPA, as you're aware, Adams County's award for ARPA funds is approximately $7 million over 2 years. I believe we've already received that first installment. We'll get the second installment next year in somewhere around May. One of the categories for the use of those funds, and it's the last category, is water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. There's a program with SRF, it's called the SWIFT program, which we're already in the hopper for, which is state water infrastructure funds. It includes sewer projects, and there's a local matching requirement. If the county provides matching, that fund will provide additional money to a project, but there's a matching component for the county. And the county can use ARPA funds to provide that matching component. Because of the county's, Adams County Regional Sewer District's rate structure, because our rates are over $85 a month, our rate is $93.30, the matching part is 50%. So that means if they would grant us if they would grant the county or say that they would allocate $2 million to the county in additional funds, then our matching requirement would be 50% of that out of ARPA, which would be $1 million. If they said they would if they would offer a million, then our matching at 50% would be $500,000. So I guess what we wanted to do was approach the council. We're in the hopper now for those funds. We don't know quite yet how much we might be able to get, but if the council would give us an indication that they would be willing to use ARPA funds as that matching requirement, then that, as you can see, leverages money for the sewer district to do this project, keep rates low, and do these projects and expand the district. So we wanted to come to you today and give you that information. I don't know, Barry, if you have anything else to add?
No. They did delay that till the end of this month on announcing the SWIFT money. So it's amazing how many people are asking. I know you're going to hear the ones that don't, but that are asking, will you come to us? Will you bring sewer to us? They can't add on to their homes. They can't get permits. Yes, you hear the squeaky wheels that are complaining that don't, because those are the ones you hear. But I would say on an average, Larry's here too, on an average, we hear at least 5 to 7 phone calls a week asking if we could get sewer to them. So it's helping the county. We're building homes. We're looking down at Burn, a 40 lot subdivision that will come on probably due to the sewer district running lines by down the road, down 700. We just have it's helping the county's whole future. I mean, it's got to be, a plus for our tax base. We lose industry. If we got homes, we'll get industry back. And that's the bottom line. We're looking to make this county grow. And I think our step is one of the big steps in keeping this county thriving. I mean, and that's all on you guys and the commissioners to support what we're doing. I don't feel we're doing anything in the wrong side. Just like I mentioned, I met with Fan Church last night. They're needing to help themselves out, so it's a big plus. If we can get growth in the county, it's the bottom line. And we're seeing it. And I appreciate everything and anything you guys can do for us.
We're seeing it a lot quicker than what we expected, quite honestly. So I think the sewer district didn't have any anticipation that they would be able to get the amount of grant funding that they've received in the last 2 years as quickly as they have in order to expand sewer out in rural areas like we have been doing. So it's been very good. The timing's been right, and I can't overemphasize the importance of the cooperation of the county in helping the sewer district secure these grant funds and matching funds, especially by, the line of credit. That was huge, because when SRF comes along with money, they want to see that you've got projects that are engineered and are ready to go. And the only way you get project engineered is money. You got to spend the money up front to get it engineered, so that when they say they're ready to go, there's a timeline that you have to go to bid and you have to close. And if you don't have that engineering done, you're behind the 8 ball. You can't get it done. And so that has been huge. In fact, that cooperation between the county and the district is the reason that tomorrow, I think we're meeting with,
We don't want the press to announce that early.
okay, but we have a meeting tomorrow, so there'll be an announcement.
So you don't need an answer today about the ARPA funds though, right? You're just kind of giving us a heads up, or?
Well, I think what we're asking for is, we're asking just to give council information and to hear from you, is the council, willing to provide ARPA funds? We don't have a specific ask today. Once we find out, what we might need, is the council willing to, dedicate ARPA funds in some fashion as matching funds to help us leverage additional money with SRF? I think that's the question.
Just a general consensus from the.
Yes.
I mean, I think I know I would be, depending on though, but I think we have to assess where else those funds can be used, and, so that it's going to depend on the ask, but I know personally, I'm open to it.
And it takes a plan from the commissioners and the council. We have to develop a plan first before we can allocate it. So we haven't even met yet to discuss what plans we're using that money for.
We've got an outline of what the plan needs to look like, but as far as specific projects in the plan, that has to be developed. I know the sheriff's department has some projects they want to do. There's a project here in this building that we want to include, which is the HVAC, because if we don't, we're going to have to pay for it out of county general. And we've seen another county that has actually utilized ARPA funds for an HVAC project in one of their buildings, and that was an acceptable use. So that is another way that we can use those funds to do things that we otherwise would have to take out of our checkbook.
And I know Colton Bickle also has some plans for the ARPA funds as well. So there's a lot of people with their hands out that are already approaching us.
Oh, yeah.
So without
You're going to see that.
us working with the commissioners to create a plan, I'm not comfortable to say, yes, we're definitely going to allocate to any of these plans yet.
Well, we just wanted to have it on your radar screen. We wanted you to be aware that is something that the district would be asking for.
I think the last part of what you're talking about is also something that has been discussed, that most counties are utilizing a consulting firm, a reputable consulting firm, to guide them through this process, because if you mess up, you got to pay it back. So we don't want to mess up.
Yeah, and that's the other thing on the agenda here too. I reached out to Barnes and Thornburg, and they've indicated that, they're doing this for counties, and it's like $2,500 a month to consult on an as-need basis, and those funds can be paid out of the ARPA funds. You don't have to take them out of county general. Any consulting fees are also eligible to be paid out of ARPA funds. And I've asked for a proposal on that, and I haven't gotten a written proposal yet.
Because Baker Tilly does it as well. So what's their?
We'll probably get one from them as well.
Okay.
But that's really all I've got.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Any other questions for Mark? Or is he good to go? Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony, he talked about the hiring the firm, but did you want to talk about that more? I know it was on the list of.
Not necessarily. For my purposes, I don't care what firm is hired. I just feel if it's my name that's going on these reports that I'm sending into the Treasury Department, And then it's my name on there when we get audited. I just want to make sure we're doing it correctly, and it's kind of convoluted. Like you said, everybody's got their hands out. I mean, the library has asked where we're at. I mean, it's doing a number of things, so I think
We could be
I
the
have
one,
said, let's just slow down.
you'd be the only one going to jail though, right?
What's that?
It's really nice.
It's new.
You'd be the only one going to jail.
That's true.
But
Perspective,
it is a
Sheriff.
pretty nice facility,
I hope I would get
as far as jails go.
I would.
Okay, just anyone that's in the audience, if you're here for a commissioner meeting, that starts at 11. You're welcome to stay, but if you're waiting for the commissioners, that will start in a little bit. Julie Murray, do you have other things that you want to discuss? No?
Nothing. Thank
Okay. Tony, do you have, under auditor's report, do you have? Okay,
Well, you want to hit the transfers first?
okay.
I think we already, all the additional are here, I believe, on their own. I don't think we need to do that again.
Yes.
We already did it.
No, we did those. Okay, transfers?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I have the motions on all those. Yeah, transfers would be, transfers we have the jail from the overtime account, increasing that and decreasing the jailer's account. Probation, office supplies and travel, increasing by 12,000, the probation officer line decreasing by 12,000. Adult user fees, drug testing increasing by 5,000, and part-time decreasing by 5,000. Those are the three transfers.
And the probation has an extra 12,000 in their account because they shifted it to the grant?
They had a probation officer retire. That had been here over 3.
Okay, okay.
Motion to approve.
Corey made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Fred? Corey and Fred, any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay,
Okay, I want to come up here to discuss the next thing. If that's okay.
Yep.
Because I'm hard to hear, so.
We better make sure it's on. See?
Tony, are you,
I just put them
hey,
down.
Tony? You want,
You can come up if you want to stand.
Sign that one.
You did that back in school, didn't you, Stan?
he might have it up there.
only
Is that,
but I like it.
he's got that right there. Tony, is that the transfer paperwork that you want everybody to start
Oh,
signing?
yes.
Thank you.
The additions,
2, 3. Oh my goodness.
Yes, that's good.
the other ones will be in there.
Ready.
Yeah. And I know I do have a few things to sign. Kathy's.
All three of these?
I think I have one.
Do you have this?
Maybe not.
I was trying
Yeah, we could limit them.
before those get lost.
Okay, yep.
Consolidate.
And that didn't happen.
We'll see what they say.
Okay, Tony, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I feel like this has been talked about for quite some time. Precipitating back in May, when Erin left her position and went into the private sector. And since that time, the finance deputy took over everything that was being done there. So I, as a department head, kind of had a decision to make. Do we hire somebody new? Do we, what do we do that's best for the county as far as economics, and what's best for my department that I am in charge of? Obviously, when the payroll deputy left, those duties went to the finance deputy. HR coordinator was hired. And when it was first being discussed, I think the thought was that that position might come in and be able to help with some of the payroll stuff. Well, come to find out, the HR duties were much more than what we had anticipated. And that's a full-time gig. You can see this, you've been working on PTOs, you've been working with various departments, all this stuff. So because of that, she actually has her own office on the 3rd floor, so we are still short one in our office. So I spoke to the members of the staff and I said, if I pursue this with council and commissioners, is this something that we can do, short of hiring somebody that would require more benefits and everything else at a cost to the county? So we opted for this. I did get job descriptions approved by the commissioners, went before wage appeals, and the wage appeals that we had, at least the part on the transfer deputy and the deputy auditors, those job descriptions had not yet gone to the commissioners, so the wage appeals was contingent upon what the commissioners did with those job descriptions. And I think I might let Stan and or Shannon speak to what has transpired kind of, and then Corey, of course, is on wage appeals as well. You're not aware. So between the three of you, and I'm available for whatever questions you want to ask, but I'm just seeking, what I'm doing is seeking for the deputy auditor and the transfer auditor who are going to take on additional duties, and it's in their job descriptions, that they both be made any 5 because of the financial aspect and so forth. And I think wage appeals, I'll let Corey speak to what wage appeals decided, and then I'll let Stan speak to what had transpired from that, if that's okay.
Yeah. So I guess skipping the chief deputy for a minute and just talking about these other two. The original beginning of all this was we could do Shannon because we wouldn't need to replace the other position. And so that was the reason that we were able to do her in the first place. And so now we're just kind of doing the reshuffling according to that plan. The request was that both those go from any 4s to any 5s. The county sort of standard is that a regular deputy is an NE4. That's just the starting point. A chief deputy is an NE6. That's always a starting point there as well. And so if you're going to be a 5, there's got to be some kind of a weird something that pushes you to have to do that. And for this one, they were asking for both to be put to 5. We had all agreed basically that we think what made a lot more sense was they're adding clerical duties and financial duties to both of them. And we said that financial one makes sense to push you to a 5. So why don't we just consolidate that? And that's the one that hadn't been approved by commissioners yet. Stan was a commissioner in that meeting, and we thought that would probably be a good idea. So all the financial stuff would be put onto one of them and all the clerical put onto the other. The clerical would stay at a 4 and the financial would go to a 5. And then we said which one of those should be the 5, and we'll let basically Tony make that decision in coordination with the commissioners. So that was the recommendation on that one. You want to skip on the recommendation for the other one?
You want to do them separate, we can.
It's up to you.
You are correct in everything that you had said. And what happened after that is they both, putting all of this just on one is going to be too much for the one, for either one. They literally both are going to be sharing these, both be doing duties that involve financial and are being put into LAO so that they can do this. This includes quietuses and so forth and so on that's in the description. And we are also going to be cross-training so that more than just one person can do some of these things, because if one person is out, we're in big trouble. Because there's really only one person who knows how to do a lot of this stuff right now. Shannon, even though it is not in her job description, has been trying to also learn to be a backup of a backup. Like I said, it's not in her job description to do that, but she is trying to help out to the extent that if something were to happen bad, that she would be able to step in. So the commissioners, and I'll let Stan speak to that, but the commissioners ended up approving both the transfer deputy and the deputy auditor job descriptions. So Stan, do you want to speak to?
Yeah, when we talked to the wage review committee, that seemed like it made a lot of sense to put, since there was additional training, additional finance responsibilities as far as going to allow, to put that on one person. And then after we talked to Tony, it's like, that wasn't gonna work because both of them needed to have the financial training and opportunity co-equally. And so what we did, we approved the original job descriptions with the changes as presented so that they both would have the additional duties and additional training that it would take to get them up to speed with the allowed financials. So what we did at our commissioners meeting was approve the original job descriptions as Tony presented. Rather than moving financials to one, we kept it to where both of them would be trained and have the additional duties of the allowed financials. So that's why we kept it at that way. So anyway, that was the job descriptions that we approved at the commissioners meeting.
I think the auditor's office is, well, it's changed dramatically since I've been here, my whole 8 months, but Aaron left and the new HR, and then they were short one, and the two girls have to work hand in hand, and, you know, like you said, there is no backup in place. If one leaves, and kind of the auditor's department shuts down, I guess, for a day or a week until they come back.
I know I've had discussions with Tony about this with I think the cross-training part of that is pretty important. Just provide some continuity within the office and some overlap is, I think, always good. And frankly, it's at a very minimal cost. We're not adding benefits, so I don't have any problem with this.
So obviously we spent a considerable amount of time going over this, you know, in the wage appeals, and it was contingent on the follow through, and that plan obviously changed after the fact.
The what follow through?
That the commissioners would approve the job description, you know, the way that we had all talked about, and I thought we all agreed on in that meeting, and then that changed post the fact.
Yeah, we were based on moving the financial duties to one, like you said, and the clerical duties to the other.
Contingent on the job descriptions.
Right.
So then, like I said, that's where I changed my mind. And after discussions with the other commissioners and with Tony and Shannon, it's like, no, both of them need to have that additional responsibility in their job description. So that's why we approved them.
Which has, yeah, I would just say in the future, it would probably make sense. I know we tried to sort of skip that step, you know, so that we could, normally they're coming to the wage appeals with the job description done, so that we're not kind of in this boat because I don't know why, I mean, we didn't really need to meet then. I mean, we had the other one yet, but we spent a lot of time for a recommendation that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
it means something. You can recommend whatever you want to recommend.
but it
So
went
the council
away.
vote on it.
Right, it's just that we all discussed and decided on a recommendation, but then it went away because the job description ended up changing after the fact.
But I think you're right.
I see what you're saying.
This down, but
Yeah, so now we're kind of messy.
Yeah. In hindsight, we should have waited until those job descriptions were the final approval of that. You are correct.
So the reason why that's kind of hard, because then when we're in this position where we're all up here, we have to do all this analysis, and it's a long conversation. But moving to a 5, you know, we're trying to be consistent, right? So we don't want to just say, you know, that feels important. We're trying to, the whole reason for the class system was to try and keep it consistent countywide. So the question has to be, does a 5 fit in line with the other 5s in the county? And you know, if they have a big financial piece, yes, I think it does. But otherwise, your other 5s are all, they're not quite the number 2, but they're like office managers. There's some kind of an extra step there that makes them different. You know, health department office manager, you know, I'm just kind of going through the list here. Parks and Rec, it's the office manager. You know, as you go down at like 911, the coordinator, just, you know, it's, so to me, moving both of them to 5 doesn't feel consistent with the rest of the system, which is why we tried to consolidate it all, put all that financial in one. So, I mean, it's really not about the money. I just want to keep the integrity of the system.
that may be something we may want to look at too, as far as the levels. That you've all got copies of the levels and the descriptions of the levels. And moving from a 4 to a 5, like as far as financial, on an any 4 for financial, it says varies. So it's somewhat vague on for a 4. For an any 5 under financial, it says various, but will likely assist the department head with budgeting decisions. So that's kind of the change in the financial. So that was one of the things with their additional requirements in the job description of moving to additional financial training and budgeting. That was part of the genesis of what.
So what do we need to do now?
I mean, honestly, I almost feel like I hate to do this, but I almost feel like it needs to go back to wage, and we need to have a long conversation about this, because this,
Well, if we
I
go
hate
back
to
to the
do
way
that,
it goes,
but-
it's going to be the same outcome. So we might as well have full council vote on today.
I know you're just
still
doing
going to
it.
recommend what you're talking about now.
Well, no, we have an hour and a half discussion, and we all talk about it and decide.
We said that it was contingent upon what commissioners did with the descriptions.
Which makes the recommendation null. There is no recommendation. There is none.
No, that's not true. Recommendations don't get followed every single time.
No, but the process was supposed to be, job description gets done, comes to wage appeals, which is commissioners and council, and the deputy who's, you know, like Tony in this case, and we all come to a conclusion, and then we recommend that, so we don't have to have a big discussion in front of the newspapers about what you're doing with wages. And we said, all right, it's okay, we can skip that step because we think we're okay. And because we skipped it, now there is no recommendation to bring to you.
I think it's part of the impetus for the recommendation from the Wage Review Committee to move the financial duties, the person with financial duties to an NE5 was that job description change. So with job descriptions both accommodating the increased training and financial responsibilities, I guess that would be the impetus to move them both to an 85. So I guess in consideration of what the Wage Review Committee looked at and what I looked at, Corey looked at, and then with the follow-up of the change in job descriptions, it kind of comes to you as council to make a final decision, obviously, because the wage review is a recommendation, not a decision. So it's really up to full council.
The wage review, should that just be eliminated now since we have a human resources department?
No, I definitely do not believe that. The wage is supposed to be a joint decision between commissioners and council. to try and do the hard work of thinking through how do we keep everybody consistent. And then they make the recommendation to both boards, which can change it. It's just in this case, there is no recommendation because it was contingent on the job description being approved and it didn't get approved. So there is no, like, as put, there is no recommendation at this point, which is fine. It just gets us in this sticky position where we're debating salaries in the public view. That's the part we don't like.
So I guess at this point, council could decide to do nothing, or they could decide to deny and leave them in any floor, or they could approve.
Well, based on the job descriptions, I make a motion to approve both NE5s.
Second.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion. These added duties, can they be completed in a 40-hour work week or 35, whatever we have?
That is the plan.
Is it happening right now?
Right now, the other one that we're going to talk about is not happening in a 40-hour work week. So the reason for changing that is to take some of that away so that we get back to normal and having these two do some of those duties so that they can all contain it in that 40-hour week. So we don't have comp time and overtime or any of that.
Do we already have overtime in the office?
We have comp time.
Call for the question.
There was no second to that. I have another question then. When we did away with the one position and I hired the HR, we were just told this was going to cost us an extra $20,000. And now we're finding out that's not the case because now your office has more responsibility. I'm not understanding how you have more responsibility when it's the same duties.
Well, I mean, the things, Dennis, did you call for the question? Procedurally speaking, all debate needs to stop when the question is called and the vote needs to be taken. Pursuant to Robert's rules.
And in Robert's Rules of Order, it said it had to have a second to that.
I think they both
I
seconded it.
thought John and Dennis.
Call the question.
Oh.
If there was no second to the call of the question,
Oh,
the
right, I'm
debate.
sorry, I thought you did. My apologies.
Sorry. Well, yeah, the responsibilities haven't changed, but they've decreased the number of people. And I mean, the overlap with the financial training and the responsibilities.
Well,
You know,
the other
it's
factor
it's
is
much-
that
it's much
Shannon's
cheaper.
position is under the auditor's payroll
But under the
by
commissioners.
statute,
Right.
but she's under the commissioners. She has her own office. We are one short in the office.
We're not going to settle
Right.
this.
So
in
this
special
was the
today.
most economical way that I could think of
Yes,
for
in
the
lieu,
county.
in lieu of hiring another
Not going
person,
to settle this today.
we go this route.
That was,
And so basically, kind of what happened was we thought we could pull it off without hiring another person. And now we're not quite, we think we still can, but we're saying it costs more than we thought it would, basically, because there's more duties than we thought there would be.
Yeah,
Like-
I would say of the 60 to 65% of the duties that the previous payroll deputy had were HR, maybe 60% were HR. There's actually 110% that's actually there that needs attention and needs addressed and needs to consistently be worked on and done. And I'm uncovering those things every day.
So do we need to hire another person so that they're not getting?
well, I'm trying not to do that, and I think these things, there's never guarantees, but these things should allow for the job to be done with dividing, because they are not taking those duties on yet until this is all approved. But when they take those additional duties on and lessen the duties of the other person, then we should be okay as far as comp time, overtime, and all that stuff.
Without
That's what we're saying. We can contain it without any comp time or hiring anybody
I'll ask.
at this particular time. And I mean, the office works hard. I mean, anybody that's been up there knows that there's a lot going on. So the additional duties they're taking on are planned, and I'm helping more too. I'm taking some of it on myself so that we can stay within that comp time. If anybody's staying over to do anything, it'll be me because I don't get comp time. I don't get overtime. So that's my plan. If there's an overrun on this, I will just do it myself.
Kathy?
I just have a question. Has the county ever considered outsourcing the payroll? Other counties do that.
I don't know that we've ever considered, I don't know what the cost on that would be.
I mean,
have
if
no
it
idea.
would,
But I think we can do this in-house without going down that route.
Well, it's gonna get simplified
and
through the
not
new-
hiring another person?
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
John said, it's gonna get simplified through time.
Eventually, in maybe a year or so, it'll be a little
Yeah.
easier.
everything be automated, no more paper.
Yeah, Kathy,
And
we
at that
talked,
point,
That
it
would
wouldn't
be a
an
year of
outside.
overtime.
Kathy, we talked about that quite a bit during the wage meeting, just because I think you guys said it's taken her like a day and a half to do payroll every 2 weeks. And, you know, with some of these automated systems, you don't even need to hire it out. You can just hire the service, electronic service that, you know, does it in 20 minutes. I mean, it's just,
Just ask.
yeah, so it's a great idea.
Well, but as John said, when the timekeeping system is all up and running, that should simplify it in and of itself, so there's no need to go that route at a particular time. And then that will also help the comp time situation too, when that happens.
And like I said before, that when Erin left and, you know, we replaced her with Shannon, everything was fluid. We didn't know. We took our best step forward with the information that we had and tried to make the best decision. Turns out that there were a lot of duties that were intermingled between Bree and Erin, and if this is the solution for it, and it broadens the job description, helps alleviate all the comp time and at a minimal cost. I mean, I don't see any downside to it.
Honestly, too, again, the overlap and the backup, I mean, really it'll make for a better, should make for a better office, more continuity, less interruptions, because we do have backup. Not that they can back up entirely, but if they can back up portions, I mean, that should be a real positive, I would think.
Tony, how many hours a week do you think the financial part of it will be on each of these two people?
I mean, I don't know, it's hard.
Because it's number 10 and 11 on these job descriptions, so I'm just curious, with assisting with completing pay-ins and assisting chief deputy with tracking all county grants. I mean, is it like an hour a week, or are we talking this is 10 hours a week?
I would say, if I had to put a guess on it, I'd say they will each be doing at least 8 to 10 hours additional with this. It's just my best guess.
Just on that part, not the clerical part?
Right. Yeah, just on that part of it. Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll call it to a vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And I wish I was done, but I'm not. We now have the chief deputy and finance deputy, and I think we did have a unanimous decision on that when we did it, so if you want to address that.
Yeah, so this one is Bree's position. So the typical chief deputy is an NE6, and she's an NE5 right now, but she's not the chief, so she is now. So this job description moves her to the chief deputy. So that automatically puts you at the 6. And then there are only 3 7s in the county, and those are the administrators of the 2 courts and the prosecutor. And so we all agreed that this could be the 4th 7 because of the nature of, she's basically the county's CFO at this point. And so, you know, that warrants putting her on the same level as pushing above a 6 up to that 7. So there's only 4 of them, but I think we all agreed that that made sense.
And that was a job description that had already been approved.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, that position is the
There's been
CFO.
discussion of possibly an 8. Kind of went back and forth, but I don't know if there's any 8s in the county.
There are no 8s right now, yeah,
Is what
which would
that-
put them above all of the court administrators at that point.
Do I think she's worth that? Yes. But I understand where you're coming from.
I'll make motion to accept.
I'll second.
Okay,
Oops. You write that motion second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
I might as well stay up here. You have the rest of the salary ordinance. Do you guys have that? Jailer Joseph Laughlin, request biweekly is $13.96. I'm assuming that's a new hire, I would assume, right, Shannon?
Yes. He's replacing, one of the jailers that quit.
So we want to do more at a time.
No, I think we've
Yeah.
covered most of it, yeah.
The other ones are, what had kind of happened is, when Jack was in here, I don't know if he broached that subject or not, but we were, actually re-noticed that one of these lines had zeroed out, because if you remember back at budget time, well, some of you remember back at budget time, they were going to pay her out of that line until the grant came through, to pay it out of that grant. So we had to kind of backtrack a little bit because it was zeroed out and it kind of got skipped over in that department. So this balances that out. It corrects the pay, because you're going effective October 16/21, it's the same amount, it's just coming out of a different line. Because the one had zeroed out. So that's all that is.
I have a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Fred?
Second.
Kathy made a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Anything else, Tony, that you have?
Did you can hand that out, I think. You got this one. Yeah, you sent it out as a waste list.
So we have the.
And
He's
Corey,
leaving, he said he's.
will these two-
Yeah. I don't know how you wanna do that,
That's what I figured out.
At some point,
but you just wanna bring it up right now, or when you're done with this, or
it's up to you.
that's the one you emailed out, right? I haven't.
I emailed it out twice.
Did you get her final summary?
Does it have the cap stuff and all that
Without
kind
your
of stuff that has
changes.
your longevity in there as well? And, okay.
So two of her, like you said, you
Where did it go into?
roll into it, came up. And two on the jail bond, and two cabs for the Excel software on my budget. And we've got a couple other places, so it's about even with that 3%.
Okay, yeah, we can maybe do that after this.
I think we'll have to wait on this. We're running out of
There's
time.
also some,
This wasn't on the agenda.
It kind of ties in.
Yeah, it goes with this. So this is,
It's stuff we need to know for the
you
salary.
gotta
ordinance
know this stuff.
Next month.
So this paper that I handed you, the 2021 column is the salaries this year. 2022, we did a 3% on the base
For incoming employees.
for incoming employees. And then down at the bottom, we'll see, that I have on it. So what we did on the salary ordinance so far is we took the 2021 biweekly, so what our biweeklies are now, times 3%, and then we added in 25 cents if they have a college degree, and then up to the 25 cents for their evaluations to get our 2022 biweeklies, and that's how I came up with the numbers to put into the budget to advertise. And then Shannon has her wage. Questions? Like, we just need to know, we're showing this so that you, because it still has to be decided on how we're going to figure wages.
This is basically just to advertise high. It's not what our actual numbers are yet.
Correct, this is what we
Yes,
did to advertise, and so there's gonna have to be a decision on,
That.
yes, on how we're going to figure, if it's going to take our 2021, do whatever increase, and then plus the wage adjustments to get our new biweeklies, or however you guys are wanting to do it. We just need to know how to figure stuff.
But again, this is for advertising purposes, not actuals, right? At this point.
I think this is the decision. I mean, yeah, I've done advertising. The bottom thing is how I got our numbers for advertising. That is how I got us high.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
So that way, if you guys do approve that, if that's how you end up wanting to figure it in the end, we are high enough. But we just need direction, because there is no direction in what we have right now on going by the resolutions we have now, we base this off of. But that's why Shannon's put together a wage.
So last time we talked about the resolutions for wage adjustments, and that's what this package that I've given to you guys once, and then again with revisions, discusses, is how do we want to handle those things moving forward? We're gonna need that decision at some point, and I mean, I know we're getting close to
Yep.
time, but
I think we need to, the decisions being made in this need to have a full council, kind of like a work session like we did with the PTO policy, because there's a lot of stuff.
A lot. It's basically everything over the last 3 years consolidated into one document, so.
So I would suggest I would like to,
Do a study or a work session.
yeah, a work
think.
session, but do we want to wait till after our budget hearings? Budgets are next month, and I don't know how we can, I really don't want to take on too much right before budgets.
I mean, this has got to be decided though, because we can't figure wages.
Well, this, but not necessarily everything in this.
Right, but it kind of all like ties together. That explains this, because the resolution that, and Julie Marie can speak, the resolution that's passed right now is what we're going off of, that you get the 25 cents every year for education, and you get up to 25 cents every year for
No,
evaluation.
I agree. We need to
So
get.
that's what because, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into this, so I've sat and figured all of them off of this. If you're going to change how you want it figured, then that's, sitting and redoing all that again. So that's why we kind of wanted to come to you guys today and say, okay, you gotta tell us how you want this figured. So that's why we brought this. We can't keep just like pushing it down the road, because you guys, you gotta give us time to get this stuff figured to sign off.
No, I agree. I think we need to do it before the budget stuff, which is just I don't know how people are gonna do that with work schedules, but I
mean,
feel like it has to.
I'm fine if we do a work session, but it needs to be in the evening.
I'm okay. I don't know if you guys want to try and figure out a date now, or do you want Julie to try and do that?
Yeah, we can figure it.
Okay.
But that way you guys have the documents to know what's been figured so far.
so we're gonna schedule a work session to discuss these numbers and this, correct?
I don't know about those numbers,
Yeah.
but that we definitely need. I mean, I know we need that, but I feel like that has to be part of the budget process. This, I feel like, is before that.
Well, I don't think that Bree can do her budgets if she doesn't have that information.
I think it's
right?
everything's pertinent on this, correct?
Yeah,
It all goes together.
Then we can fill in the blanks here and correct it here, whatever we do here.
Yeah, your process, but I mean, like, are we doing 3%, or are we, like, that part of it? I don't think we can know that until.
I don't need the percent, but I mean, there's gotta be
Where do we put the
Formula.
quarter?
you gotta
Where
tell-
in
yeah, you
the
gotta tell
order
how.
does that quarter go?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Two
Which
And
we
it
do
needs to
that,
be in writing.
which is what's inside of that document.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Stan?
And I'm not sure exactly what all you're discussing. Are you discussing changes to the wage adjustment policy?
Yes.
Clarifying it, I believe.
Yeah, that's
It
in
would
there.
be, it would be clarifying it more or less.
Right, and I can resend this to you guys, but.
Well, and I guess that's the only thing that, I mean, obviously, we have nothing to do with the wage at this point, but if it addresses policy changes, then we probably should be involved.
I agree. I definitely agree. It should be a joint work session because there's a lot in there that has to do with the commissioners.
Anything else?
Well, we were going to bring up, obviously Baker Tilly had been hired to council training, I think is what it was called, for budget procedures. And they are at the 15,000 max. So if council wishes them to continue in any way, it would have to approve additional monies, I guess. I think the last thing, Corey, that we got from Paige was the final summary that she had sent, and basically said, you're close to a balanced budget, everything can be paid, everything that, as it was proposed, can be paid using some cash, what's the word, balances or?
Using your reserves, yeah.
Reserves.
Which, yeah.
And I sent out to all of you fairly recently. Bree and I went through the budgets, and Fred was also up there. So Fred was up there as well, and we found, I think I mentioned just briefly to you a second ago, that we had some stuff that we could move out of county general, because county general is what you were worried about. And we moved it into some of the CUME funds to use that instead, so that meant less cash balances would have to be used. I did send that to Paige as well, and I haven't heard back anything on her thoughts on that one. But I'm assuming that if she had said, as they were proposed, and using that much revenue, that if we took $1 million out, and we actually put in the 3% increase. So putting in the 3% increase and taking the other stuff out of county general, we were still $1 million under what had been proposed. So I guess that's, again, I don't know if you should have gotten that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, so, when I look at it, yeah, there's, some changes yet that need, from what you guys figured out. But I think, overall, you've got, I think 13 out of 16 accounts right now that would be in the red based on the spending. But you're saying you think you got county general to get back to positive. The question would be, did it push others more into the red, or did it take one of the positive ones and get them to flat, or how did that work? But that's all the budget discussion, I guess, that we'll have and get figured out. The question.
I can tell you the stuff taken out of county general mostly was out of commissioners, and it was a jail bond payment and auditor with that software. Those are the two biggies. And then there were some other things in there that, those were two big ones. Which during budget hearings now, I'm not sure exactly what all they will be. If we put the 3% in there, and I think that's mostly what departments were going to come and discuss, was the 3% raise. And if it's already in there and we're still under budget, then that could save time during hearings. But it just depends on how that goes and, what they think when they see the budgets that go out. They may decide they don't really need to come in. But I don't know that. Some of them still want to come. I'm sure the sheriff will want to come.
what are you thinking, Corey?
What, 8 hours? Yeah, okay.
I'm cutting him off. He's not getting 8 hours. No.
I mean, I feel like we have a lot of work to go. I'm encouraged and I think we can get there. When I add all those up though, you add your positive balances to your negative balances, we're 1.8 million negative. Now, if you shuffle those around, the net effect doesn't change. You know what I mean? Like if it doesn't change anything, if it moves from this account to this one,
Well,
your
it
overall
does,
still
because
different.
if you take stuff out of county general and you pay it out of the cume fund, the cume funds have their own tax rate. So county general is those are tax driven, that's what you want to focus and lower on. That's what we lowered from 14 something to 13 something, about $1 million approximately. Those cume funds will be populated again in December when we have the fall tax settlement. And I can tell you that the assessed value, the net assessed value, which I think I may have sent out to you guys, I'm pretty sure I did. Well, that's what I handed out earlier. Is millions higher in assessed value, which normally translates into more tax money coming in.
It's like 30 million higher.
30 million. So.
And then the Baker Tilly subtracted 5% from last year's
The
numbers,
preliminary one.
and
they said that came
and that
better.
that's better than the numbers they used. So
Which Paige also said saves a pretty decent amount of money right there. So if some of the other ones are also either flatlining or better, that's also going to relate to some more savings.
Right.
but aside from just telling us to cut a budget, they haven't helped us find anything. They have not analyzed anything and given us any direction for how to decrease. We found that stuff. And so honestly, I don't feel like we need them.
I don't either. I can quantify the $15,000 we've spent so far.
So this sheet that they gave us that tells us what we expect to receive next year minus the expenses, we've never had that before.
Well, we've never
That's
asked
way
for
more.
it. We got it from the auditor's office.
The LGF.
We
gives
just
us those
didn't
numbers.
ask for it.
That's where they got it.
Or I didn't ever ask for
Well,
it, but it was always available.
This is our first time going through this. Maybe you guys haven't asked for it in the past, but I just don't see where they've really helped us.
But it does feel as though your opposition to them helping is not so much about that. It feels like it's about something else because we spend $15,000 on additional appropriations like candy in here. And they have given us
That's
a
for
lot
real
of.
necessities. It's it's not.
This is the first time that we've ever been able to say, we have 13 out of 16 counts that are in the red if we don't change something. We never knew that before. We've never, that's worth millions.
They use our same system that we do, the exact same software.
There's
There's nothing that they can give us that we don't currently have access to. That's all I'm saying.
There's been a lot of information.
Answers to questions that
There's
we
been a
haven't
lot of
known the answer
information
to.
that we have generated ourselves based on the numbers that we've gotten. And again, they have not helped us find anything.
We have the
We haven't asked
DGLF,
them to
State
help
Board of
us find
Accounts,
anything.
and
We wanted
auditors.
them to help us with that, and we voted it down and told them, the only thing we'll let you help us with is a budget process. That's the only thing that you guys let them do. And then to come back and say they haven't helped us with the things that you told them they couldn't help with, that's really not fair. I mean, $15,000 for them to identify that we've got a $1.8 million deficit.
And even for them to,
I mean, that's like fractions of a cent.
but the only thing they're gonna tell us, that they've been telling us, is cut the number. But no direction on how, no looking for, again, no looking for anything. And they wanna charge us $5,000 just for a day to come up here and sit through our hearing.
She's also saying if you want, that it can be just based on hourly for being available for calling. So it doesn't have to be here, we can call and ask questions. But I feel like we've had a lot of questions answered, a lot of questions that have.
You guys have. They only communicate with you two. They haven't sent anything to the rest of us.
That's because I'm on the budget committee and that's where this whole thing started.
We're all on the budget
Anybody who
committee.
wants to ask for that can ask for anything they want, just because I email with them and ask questions.
What budget committee?
It's the one we
Committee
approved at the
that,
first meeting of the year.
Yeah,
You were on it.
You missed it
You
because
can.
of vacation. Kathy had to sit in. The commissioners were here. We had Mark.
Oh, yeah.
That's where this whole thing started. That's why.
Well, we can
that's
bring
what
it to a
came-
vote, but I will not support bringing them in for any more.
Okay, well, I move that we appropriate $6,000 for
Well, I
them
don't
to be able
remember.
to
I guess
answer questions.
the budget, there was, I remember 3 and I missed 2. Did they keep going? I didn't get in any invitations.
No, we slowed down after that because after we hired them, we said, let's let them just drive the boat.
I was just curious. I didn't know if those meetings continued because I didn't get invited.
So my motion is that we do appropriate $6,000, which is nothing, to be able to continue asking questions.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Does it have to be 6?
What would you support?
I would, 3.
Based on what?
Is that the 1,000? Because she said she could be available for 1,000 a day for questions. And that's the 3 meetings. I would amend it to that.
Will we be having any meetings beforehand?
With her?
Not with $3,000 with your budget.
I'm not sure what we get for $3,000. I mean, it's $5,000 a day to come up here.
No.
Yeah, but-
That's what it was for the one, but she said that it would be 3 for her to come. Didn't she say it was 3 for her to come here? 1,000 per day to be
So it
available
was
for questions?
3,000 for video, for Zoom.
Yeah. If she was here the whole time though. But the other days were 1,000 to call when we had questions.
I'm still strictly believe that we have the auditor's department, the DGLF, and the State Board of Accounts to guide us through any questions.
But we maximized the DLGF. The last conversation we had with them was they gave us all the information they could.
We've just never been in a position before where we are right now, where we know revenue minus expense, where we're projected. We've never been in that position. The information you guys have in front of you, we've never had. And it feels like a kind of a no-brainer, but we've never had that.
You were just beating them up over $1,000 or $2 a year on wages, and now you're saying $5,000 is nothing. I'm not supporting it.
That was $20,000. We
No.
did 8 for her, 4 for each of them. That's 16 total, plus the benefits on that. That was 20. And I was not in favor of the way that happened. We've done
I'm not-
close to $1 million in additional appropriations,
Not
but we
supporting
won't spend 5 to get answers for a $20-some million
We've
budget.
already spent 15.
On a $20-some million budget when we never had these questions
Sure.
before.
Again, you can bring it to a vote, but I will not.
This is
support it.
why I feel like there's something else here, because this is black and white. You got a
It is
$1.8
black and
million
white.
deficit, and you won't spend 5,000 to figure
No.
out the answer.
We've spent money on it.
And now you have a huge amount of information that you've never had before.
That's-
don't know how that's not value.
That's a lot of the information I got, I went up and got myself. You can ask them, I've been up in the auditor's office a ton.
Have you-
Looking at all these numbers and working on learning the budgets, knowing the budgets, so I'm making an informed vote. And I will not support it.
We have a motion. I think we were waiting on a second.
Did we get a
I'm
second?
asking for where she's at.
What was the motion?
It was
for
5. She
5.
asked if she could amend it to 3, and I said yes.
I really don't want to spend the money. Can the State Board of Accounts help us even more? Can they come back? I mean, is there questions? I know when I was doing budgets, the State Board of Accounts didn't cost us anything.
They're downstairs right now.
Pardon me?
They're downstairs right now. You can ask.
And the DLGF is willing to help George was helpful. I think John was here whenever we met. I think it was John was here when we met with George. I mean, they're happy to help. DLGF helped with
Actually,
all the
Fred
budgets.
Von Dorp, George's boss, called the other day regarding some of the net assessed valuation, like personally called here, which I thought was pretty cool, and he's kind of high up there. So,
By Paige, her last email, when she said that we were in pretty good shape,
And I don't agree that that was the way that email was considered. I think the way that was she sent this out showing a $1.8 million deficit, and Tony replied saying that they found $1 million, but it wasn't you found $1 million, you just moved it from one place to the next.
If you look at our overall cash balance in the last 4 years, it has gone up $14 million. Gone up. I mean, yeah, of course you're gonna move it. That's what you're talking about doing, is moving it around.
Right.
The
but
general
it's-
fund is the most fluid account that we have, but there's a lot more in and out of that. So that balance does vary the most.
I agree
But even it has grown. The DLGF says we're in good shape.
But you also can't have a budget that appropriates 1.8 million more than you're bringing in. You just can't
We
do
don't.
that. You do.
No, we
That is
don't.
what, right now, that's what it looks like. You have a budget that has gone up by 80% in 10 years. That's unreal. It's not, and that's why we need to get that's why we got outside help, to help us figure out why. What's happening? Why are we spending so much? Why are we taxing so much?
But what did they
I
tell
don't
us?
think we're taxing
What
any more
was
than any
their-
other county.
Well, we handcuffed them, and you guys only let them figure out this budget process. So that's all we've been able to do. And now you won't even let them finish it.
I've got her email called up, you want me to read it?
Yeah, and you need to read yours too.
It says, attached, well, this is Paige's final summary, I believe. But I think I sent that out to all of you. Attached are summaries of the 21 and 22 budgets. For 22, all budgets can be funded as proposed, except for Park and Rec non-reverting operating. That budget is unfunded by $38,000. The rest of the budget, except LIT, economic development, MVH restricted, and county wheel tax, are estimated to use cash reserves to fund the budget. Most of those aren't in county general. See net cash flow column, a negative number in that column represents use of cash reserves. And I think I had followed up and sent out that Park and Rec non-reverting is populated with user fees. It's not tax driven. It's not even a watched DLGF budget because it's populated with the user fees that people pay to go to the Park and Rec, which in 2020, nobody did because it was COVID. So they didn't have user fees. That's why it looks like it's unfunded now. So that's exactly what that email said.
And when it's
And
saying
I think most of the stuff on there that she asked to send forward, I sent,
before,
I
yeah.
said, Yvette can send that out if she likes as council president, but if she would like me to, I will. And so I ended up forwarding that to everybody.
And I agree with what she's saying, and what she's saying is they can be funded. You have enough reserves to spend more than you bring in. It doesn't mean that you should. She's saying you can. That you don't just start using your savings account just because you can. That's a difference. So she said you've got a couple accounts that do not have the reserves to fund this, and then the rest of them, other than those three, you have reserves to pay for more than what you're bringing in. It does not mean you should, though.
But
Right.
also, we do not spend all of our budget, and that's not incorporated into this. But
Right.
I mean, that is one thing DLGF plays in, that goes into whenever I get these budgets, advertised in Gateway, it takes into effect, you don't spend every dollar. So like, yeah, she can say that we're spending our cash reserves, but in reality, you're kind of not, because you never ever spend every dollar of our budget for this year. So you're always carrying over.
And that's something that George specifically has stated on numerous occasions. And from Paige's final summary, Fred had said he had been up there a few times. And with all of us kind of looking through things, that's where we found monies that we could use with CUME funds rather than county general. And that's how we got that cut. So that's less cash reserves that will need to be spent into county general. I really feel like as we go through budget hearings, I think we're going to see that it is not doom and gloom, it is not dire. I think we're, as I think Paige said at one time, in pretty good shape, I think were the exact words. I can't find that exact email, but. And George also said that we had a budget workshop. Every county that he has, well, every county in the state has a budget workshop with the DLGF. George just happens to be our rep. And we have to submit, he looks at everything we put into Gateway, and he said that we look like we're in good shape.
So if we do 3,000, we have the ability to call her, right? If we don't call her, then she doesn't bill us, correct?
Let me look.
Oh, well, I don't know.
I think there were.
There'll be a retainer fee.
I think the end of the day, it comes down to whether or not I just believe that you can't have a budget that's a deficit. I just don't think that's who we are as a people and as a county.
I don't think our
It's not
budget is a deficit.
deficit.
Your budget is. If they don't spend it all, that's great, but I definitely don't want to bank on the fact that somebody might not spend what you've given them the authority to spend.
I think there's some interpretation
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah. So is there a second to the motion, or?
I'm going to have to rescind my 3,000 offer. We've spent the 15. I know that Fred has gone in and has worked in there. You have found money in different line items that you can move. I don't believe that, I just rescind it. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, we're in a room full of competent people, and backed by teams of competent people. I don't feel the need to spend any more money.
I mean, we have what we've got, and I think that everybody is intelligent enough to go from there. I mean, one of the reasons that we hired them was to find everything that has been found so far, one of the reasons.
Okay, motion dies from lack of a second.
I'll make a motion to end our contract with Baker Tilly.
Second.
Motion,
Just for procedural, I don't think we even need that, right? I mean, the money's expended. Commissioners do the contracts, or, I mean, there's just no additional appropriation.
Contract for services for the county council, so it is in fact.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, we never talked about spending more than the 15, so.
sorry.
I said, we never talked about spending more than the 15. I didn't know that.
Okay, we have a motion, correct?
Sorry.
John, did you make a motion?
Yep.
Okay, and Fred
Don't
seconded
put
it,
my name in the.
and I don't remember what that motion was.
To end the contract with Baker Tilly.
Okay, any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
All right.
Those opposed?
All right.
Motion carries. You get that? 4-1. Yep, 4-1. Okay, budget hearings are next month. If everyone can meet outside real quick, we need to talk about our lunches, what we want to do for lunches. So if everyone after the meeting can just,
I don't know if we need to talk about it here or out there, but I'm just curious about the process. It sounds like we discussed maybe doing it, not going line by line. Are we planning on doing that? I've already started looking at it and have a couple questions I had planned on getting answered ahead of time, but if a department's within reason, I don't see the point going line by line.
I mean, it's up to you guys, because we are not doing the other process anymore. So my biggest question, I guess, would be, we're saying that we're not gonna have them help us. Tony, can your office be able to give us, as we go through this process, this net cash flow here to show us the updated as we go? Because I really, really want to get to the end of this and know what this is gonna do to each cash balance fund.
You're not gonna have, I will try to get something, yes. the budgets are live. Last year, they were live. You went on WOW, it'll be up on the screen, you see all the changes made. I mean, a cash flow is a report that I run, and you gotta remember that you're not in 2022 yet, so I mean, that information is not in WOW.
I guess the main one, not necessarily, I mean, I do think it's important to know the ending balance, but it's also, it's the net cash flow. That's what I want to know. So with the proposed budget, proposed income, proposed expense, the income based on the tax rate that we choose, the expense based on the budget, what's the net cash
And
flow?
most of that you will probably not know until October, honestly,
And
just because.
That's my problem. That's
But
what
that-
they
but
could
that's
tell
any
us.
county.
That's any county.
They can't tell you that. That's their speculation too.
It's all estimates.
I understand that it's not
Okay, can
guaranteed.
we,
I understand that they can't say it will be exactly this dollar and cents. And I'm not asking you guys to say it will be exactly this dollar and cents. Can you give us what they gave us, which is,
I will try
here's
to-
a proposed.
I will try to find it.
We'll do the
But
best
you
we
have
can
to
do.
remember that's, you're expecting me to work the budgets, keep up with the salary ordinance, and now do a cash flow. So
Well,
you gotta remember,
we
we're trying to keep three things going.
Could have had that for 3,000, but we're not doing that because everybody thinks that we can do that ourselves. They give us the cash flow. We have to know at the end of the day, how much are we planning on?
That
as a
horse is
budget?
dead. Stop beating it.
Gateway will tell us.
Let's,
Gateway will
we're
tell
not-
us.
I'm just asking if they can do what we're saying. You're asking the budget
Cash flows are also
process.
estimates, because she
Yes.
estimated incorrectly and did not correct it until she saw it out at Gateway that it had changed. So she was operating with estimates as well.
that were incorrect.
I'm not asking for anything other than
Her
estimates.
estimates were incorrect.
We will
I'm
do
not
the best we can
asking
do.
for
Well,
anything other than estimates.
I understand, but you keep on reverting back to Baker Tilly and their estimates were incorrect as well.
I'm asking, can we have estimates, period? Whether they're right or wrong, can we get
We
estimates?
will give you estimates.
Thank you.
okay. Anything else we need to talk about concerning budgets next month?
Is a work session, going to be scheduled, Bree needs some information to, so I think she'll send out an email. Work session needs to be scheduled because the posting needs to be done by September 4th. So, gotta make a decision for that.
At least the work session on the things that we have to know to be able to do that.
Okay. Anything else concerning budgets?
I hope not.
Okay. Okay, any other council business we need to discuss? Again, please stay over afterwards so we can figure out the lunch for the next couple days during budget. Any other business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Those opposed?